Hey guys, this is Chelsea. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for being here. Today we're going to do our monthly media wrap up for April. I can't believe the month or the year actually is almost half over. It's kind of crazy. But we're going to talk about movies and then books. I don't really have a lot of TV that I watched this month except for The Circle and Monk. But other than that, I didn't really finish any series, so we're just going to go and do movies and books. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to talk about Civil War, which stars Kirsten Dunst, Wagner Moore, and Kaylee Spaney, who was also in Priscilla, and I reviewed that in my previous wrap-up, so if you guys want to check that out, you can. Basically, we follow photojournalists, and it's post-apocalyptic America. It's in the future, and they are traveling across America to go to Washington, D.C. to interview the president, who is played by Nick Offerman, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I really didn't like it that much. I felt like I wasn't really connected to the characters, and I understood the motivations, which is obviously important, and I understood why they were going to DC, but along the way I didn't feel like I was invested in the characters and their goals, and I wasn't just really into it. The first 30 minutes I was kind of already checked out, and I found it to be predictable. But I did enjoy the photojournalism aspect of it because I read this really good book, I think 2 years ago now, called It's What I Do by Lindsay Addario. I love this book. I devoured it and I found it to be really interesting. So she has a lot of really great background into her story and why she became a photojournalist. So if you guys are interested in that, she has really cool photos, and so I'm interested in this sort of world, and I did enjoy that in the book. In the movie, but I just wasn't really as into it as I thought it was going to be. But I love Kirsten Dunst, and I think she's a really talented actress, so I enjoyed her performance, and I enjoyed Jesse Plemons' performance as well, and I actually found that they're married, which is kind of cool. But Jesse Plemons just plays a really good a-hole, and when he was on the screen, I was very much enthralled. His performance is very multi-layered, and I really wanted to see where he was going to take things. And I feel like that was probably the most interesting part of the film for me, unfortunately. But that's just me, you know. Next, I'll talk about Monkey Man. This is Dev Patel's directorial debut, which is awesome. Very happy for him. And it talks about a little boy named Bobby who is with his mother growing up. They live in India. They live in a very small village. And the police chief burns down their town, and he's very much underground, very much looked over. And he decides to take life into his own hands and finds the chief officer and decides to seek revenge on him. I really liked this story because in the very beginning I was very interested. He kind of brings us throughout different parts of India, and the music score moves us along through the more seedy parts of town, but also to the very more affluent parts of town, and we get a very good understanding of how society runs and what part Bobby plays in this role. He is an underground boxer and an underground boxing club, and he throws a lot of the fights in order to make money, but like I said, he eventually decides to take life into his own hands and becomes more of the hero. I really love the story. Like I said, the soundtrack is phenomenal. Every song is different, but every song is kind of its own character, and it propels us throughout the revenge story and also to his development as a character, how he trains and the people that he meets along the way. And there's also a little bit of a romance, but it's more so in the background. It's not coming to the forefront of the story, which I really appreciate because I feel like romance stories can sometimes deter from the motivation of the character, but it did not, and it was just very well done. I will say there were a lot of flashbacks and parts that I thought were not that necessary. We really got a good idea of what his motivations were pretty early on, so I feel like when it went to flashbacks, it was at a part that sort of took me away from the present moment and what he was currently doing. I just feel like the flashbacks kind of deterred from that at some points. But overall, I really love the story. I feel like it's an instant classic. And a lot of the fight scenes are really well choreographed, and they weren't cheesy at all. I feel like a lot of the violence and the weapons that were used were very unique and creative in ways I hadn't seen before, and I love action movies, so that just made me want to watch it even more. And as soon as it was over, I was like, wow, this is a movie that I watch over and over again with friends and family, and it'd be something that I watch alone. It just I feel like it's a movie that I won't forget, and I am still finding myself thinking about it even though I've seen it a few weeks ago, so I feel like that's a really good sign. Next up, we have Musica. You can find this on Amazon Prime. It stars Camila Mendes and Rudy Mancuso. So he is also his first directorial debut, which very happy for him. But this is more of a rom-com coming of age musical, I would say. So I really, really love musicals, so it, drew me into that point. But there's also like a lot of use of puppetry and the theatrical aspect. There's like a lot of moving sets and a lot of like split screens where people are in different parts of their own sort of world, but they come together. It reminded me a lot of Amélie, that like French film that came out a few years ago. It was just like very playful, very light, very colorful. And I really liked the story also because it's not a typical rom-com. I feel like we see each person as individuals and we saw the individual personalities. And King Lear's character Isabella really like shined on her own, and she sort of forced him to follow his own dreams and to figure out who he was before they actually became in a relationship together, which I really enjoyed that part of this film. And I was very much pulled in right away. I wasn't looking at my phone. I was very interested in the characters and how they were going to come together. It was nice to see how they were motivating each other to do what they want in their lives, as well as coming together as a romantic couple. There's also like a love triangle. So there's like a lot of different elements in this film. But in the end, as soon as it ended, I wanted to watch it again, and the music was really well done. I don't know, I just really can't speak highly enough about this film. I feel like it's something that I, again, will watch over and over again, and it's just very, like, lighthearted. Okay, so that's all the movies I watched, and we're going to get to the books. I did read 3, so I'm proud of myself for that. But the first book I want to talk about is The Butcher of the Forest by Primi Mohammed. She's actually a scientist, which is pretty cool, but she's actually written a few books. This is the first piece of hers that I've read. It's a very short novel. It's about 160 pages, but it's very mystical and fantasy-esque. We follow a character named Varys, and she is sent on a mission to bring back these 2 children who are in this mystical forest. Now the 2 children are children of a very angry tyrant, and he forces her basically to go into this forest because she's the only one who's ever gone in and come out alive. So we're kind of following why she went to the forest in the first place, like what her backstory is, how she came out alive, what her motivations were for that. And we're also following if she's actually going to be able to get both of these kids out before the time runs out, because I think she has 24 hours to get them out, or else they'll be like enveloped and they'll be in there forever. So in this forest, there's a bunch of monsters, and they have their own motivations. They are very manipulative. They are sort of bargaining with her life to try to get her to stay. And so they're trying to pull her off course, obviously, so that she won't actually find the children. And it's just very fantasy-esque. I'm not a huge fantasy reader, but it is a short book, so I thought I would just dive into it. She is a very talented writer. I really like her metaphors, and her descriptions are just very painterly and very sensory, and I did feel like I was actually in this forest with these children fighting for their lives. So I did enjoy the first 2/3 of the book. The last third of the book, I did kind of fall off a little bit. I just didn't really enjoy the pacing through the last third of the book, but I will pick up other works of hers. Like I said, do think she's very talented, and I'm interested to see what her other novels are like. So next up we have the Hawthorne series, the 3rd book in the series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I did read the first 2. I talked about that in a previous video. And I did like the first one. Second one, I wasn't really as into. The 3rd book did have a lot more action, and I did like how she wrapped up the book in terms of the relationships with each other, with each of the characters, and how she sort of wrapped it all up with a lot of the, their final showdown, essentially, I'll say, which was very interesting. I do wish that there were more puzzles and more mini mysteries along the way. I feel like the overarching mystery as to why Avery received the inheritance from Tobias was lackadaisical and not very worthwhile. I feel as I was reading the 3rd book, I was like, oh, I hope she doesn't go this route. I hope she goes a different route, but she went the more predictable one, unfortunately, and it wasn't just a huge payoff for me personally. But that being said, I do really like how she has all these different characters interacting with each other. I feel like that's very hard to do, to show different personalities of everyone, but also see how they come together and sort of interweb with each other. I will not read the 4th book. I think it's a continuation of more of the brothers and their story and how they move on from this mystery being solved. But this is a YA series, I believe, so I'm not really huge into YA. I'm trying to expand my reading world and trying to read books that I wouldn't normally read. So that's why I'm trying to read more fantasy and read more series. I just want to expand my world in that way. But perhaps I should just go back to what I'm normally used to. But I do think she's a good writer, and I do think that she does a good job of you know, the sort of YA relationships, like them coming together and like the lovey-dovey cutesy stuff. Like I did enjoy that aspect of the book, but I think as far as like mysteries go and what I usually am drawn to, I just feel like that was lacking and not as multi-layered or complex as I was hoping for. The last thing I'm going to talk about is The Untethered Soul. This is a self-help book by Michael A. Singer, and it's basically about how to go beyond your limiting beliefs and to how to view yourself as the observer and not to be so attached to your emotions and have them define you. I did get, I feel like, an earlier draft of this book because there were a lot of typos and that sort of was distracting for me, but you know, that's on me. But I did like how this book was it wasn't very dense, and I feel like a lot of self-help books I've read in the past just try to pack in a lot of stuff, but I feel like this is very easy to read. It was very easy to digest, and I did like the metaphors that he used. They were very helpful. Like he talked about how you build a house on sand, it's not very stable, right? And he talks about how, like, us as humans, we attach ourselves to things that aren't really a part of our identity. Like, oh, I'm this person's husband, I'm this person's wife, I have this name, I am this, you know, this age or whatever. It's like, those are all things that we tend to relate ourselves to as humans. We're taught that very young, but that's not really who we are to our core. And so he relates that to building a house on sand and that not being a stable part of our foundation. He goes into it, you know, much more eloquently than I could ever say, but I really did enjoy this book overall. It's a very short read, and I do feel like it was helpful for me. However, I will also say that his sort of affect was very much like how easy it is to sort of change your mindset and do a complete 180. And that was a little bit like off-putting for me. Like a lot of his phrases were like, you just do this or you just do this. And it was very like simplistic in the way he was saying things, but I don't feel like he like really attached to like the gravity of how difficult it is to change your mindset about who you are and your identity. Obviously, you know, like that's a very difficult thing to do. So there are just little parts like that I found difficult to relate to, but overall I do feel like it was helpful, and I was highlighting a lot in the book, and I didn't feel like he repeated himself a lot. I feel like he did a good job of saying things in different ways, and he expanded a lot of his ideas, you know, because I feel like some self-help books, you know, people say, oh, this whole book could be a page, you know, but I don't feel like that was the case with this book. He did a very good job of being like more detailed and more descriptive of his ideas, and it was easy to follow his thinking and how it can relate to different parts of your life. Yeah, that concludes our monthly media wrap up. I'm sorry it's a little bit late this month. I'm ending school. I'm a substitute teacher, so it's kind of, you know, it's been hectic, but I will get back into it and it will be out, you know, in the actual month that I'm reviewing. So thank you for watching if you made it this far. I appreciate you being here, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.